So this is chapter 1.3, page 20, and I'm gonna do number 25 and number 27. Now, for these sets of problems, it says finding the endpoints this time, not the midpoint. So keep that in mind. All right, find the endpoints. Now use the given endpoint R and midpoint M to find the coordinates of the other endpoint. So now earlier the last set of problems we find a midpoint. So they're given two endpoints. This is endpoint number one, endpoint number and then for endpoint number two, you wanted to find a midpoint. Now you're given only one endpoint and another midpoint. So let's put back to the formula. Earlier we were using the midpoint, right, is the x of the midpoint is equal to x1 plus x2. But in this case, you only have one endpoint. You don't have the other endpoint because the red right here is actually the midpoint. So don't get that confused with the endpoint. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna plug it into the formula again. Well, I know one of the endpoint is x1 plus well I know x what x1 is equal to. Let me hold up. I know what x1 is equal to, so let me erase that. X1 is actually equals to 3, right? Because this is the x1. So 3 plus x2. Well, x2 is not given here. They're asking you to solve for that x2. So I'm going to put x2 and then I'm going to divide by 2. Now, I can't solve for this yet because I need at least one more one more given information. So this is where I'm using the x right here. The midpoint, it's given what the x is a 0. So instead of this x right here, I'm gonna put a 0 because of that 0 right here. So I'm gonna cross this out and put a 0. Now I can solve for what x2 is. So now let's solve for x2. So this is equal to 3 plus x2 divided by 2 times 0. Well, I could multiply by 2 to both sides, so let me do that. Times 2 here, then I got a times 2 here. Whenever you have an equation, you could do that. Cross that out. So this is still 0. I have 0 is equal to 3 plus x2. Now the goal is to get x2 by itself. So to get x2 by itself, I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides. So minus 3 here, minus 3 here. And now my x2 is equal to negative 3. So this is not the midpoint. This is for the endpoint, all right? Now I'm gonna do the y's now. Same thing. Y, which is the midpoint, is equal to y1 plus y2. Well, I have y1, which is 0. So 0 plus, I do not have y2 because I do not have another endpoint. So I'm going to put y2 and then divide by 2 because the goal is to solve for the endpoint. Now, I wanted to, now I need another information, which is from right here. This is the midpoint. So I have the midpoint, which is 5 in this case. So 5, now I could just solve for it. Let me just solve for this right now. So then 5 is equal to 0 plus y2 divided by 2. Well, I could solve for this. I'm going to multiply by 2 to both sides. So I'm going to times 2 here, times 2 here. Now I have 10 is equal to 0 plus y2. Now subtract 0 both sides. Y2 is equal to 10. So now I found the x. I found the endpoint x2, y2. Now I'll just plug it back into the point format. So this is x is the negative 3, y is 10. So this is your endpoint that they're looking for. This is not the midpoint like how we did the last set. So this one is number 20, 25. Now I'm going to do number 27. And let me try to remember the 2 points. So number 27, I have 6, negative 2. So 27. I have 6, negative 2. That's my first point. And my second point is, the midpoint is 5, 3. So why don't I just say endpoint? So then this is endpoint. And midpoint is 5, 3. Alright, scroll it up just to um, make sure. Cool. So this is midpoint. Alright, so now let's follow the formula. Um, Formula is midpoint is equal to midpoint of x. Or I could put an m right here so I can make it midpoint of x is equal to x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then midpoint of y is equal to y1 plus y2 divided by 2. Now just plug in the formula. Well, I know midpoint of x. So midpoint, so this is x right here, and this is y. So midpoint is, so I'm going to use the x. 5 is equal to, now find x1 plus x2. x1 is 6. Since I don't know what x2 is because, that's the other endpoint. So plus x2 divided by 2. Now solve for this. Alright, I'm going to multiply by 2 to both sides. So times 2 here, times 2 here. I have 10 is equal to 6 plus x2. Now I'm going to subtract 6 to both sides. Minus 6 here, minus 6 here. I have 4 is equal to x2. So I got one of the endpoint. Now let's find the other one. Now let's find the y. So I found the x of this endpoint. Now I need to find the y. Well, I know what the y is. The y is 3 here, so I'm gonna put 3 is equal to y1 plus y2. Y1 is negative 2. This is the y1 right here. So negative 2 plus y2 divided by 2. Now I just need to solve. Times 2 here, times 2 here. Then I have 6, so make sure it's times, is equal to, so when I multiply by 2 here, this is gone, negative 2 plus y2, and then I'm just going to add 2 to both sides, plus 2 here, plus 2 here. Your answer, y2 is equal to 8. So then now you found the x and you found the y. Just plug it back in into the point form, which is the x is 4, the y is 8. So this is the endpoint.